the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. As a teacher, I've internalized this message. Every day, all around us, we see the consequences of silence manifest themselves in the form of discrimination, violence, genocide, and war. In the classroom, I challenge my students to explore the silences in their own lives through poetry. We work together to fill those spaces, to recognize them, to name them, to understand that they don't have to be sources of shame. In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel safe sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I was always taught that the most meaningful thing one could do was to give something up, sacrifice something you typically indulge in to prove to God you understand His sanctity. I've given up soda, McDonald's, French fries, French kisses, and everything in between. But one year, I gave up speaking. Figured the most valuable thing I could sacrifice was my own voice, but it was like I hadn't realized that I had given that up a long time ago. I had spent so much of my life telling people the things they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed to.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. It's been a couple of weeks, and I am so excited that everyone has joined. Listen, I want you to tell people to come on. We have a wonderful guest that's going to be on the show tonight. But I first want to invite you to subscribe to Real Talk with Jean Price. This is a platform where we have real conversations with real people. We talk about real issues that affect the lives of people today. There's so much going on in our world, and we want to bring that to this platform to bring some insight, to bring some clarity, and most importantly, to bring some understanding from a biblical perspective as well from other perspectives, right? So our guests that come on the show, they come with their expertise and experiences. But I have found, and I know my production team can attest to this, everyone that comes on Real Talk with Jean Price always drop jewels and always drop nuggets that we can take away. So my goal is to find out, what is the takeaway? What can my guests take away from hearing something tonight that you can go tell somebody else and they can say, listen, you want to join and come on Real Talk with Jean Price every Wednesday at 6:30. And I'm so grateful tonight that Vivis has already joined on. God bless you. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk. But without further ado, I'm excited about my guest on tonight. She is a leader. She's a personal development coach for women. She has so many wonderful things that she has achieved. And most importantly, she has a story. And that's the thing that captures the heart of most people. So tonight we're going to talk about being an authentic leader. And I'm so happy to bring on to Real Talk with Jean Price, Camerlyn Richards. Help me welcome her to Real Talk with Jean Price. Camerlyn, come on out.
Hi.
How are you? Thank you for being on Real Talk.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Before we dive into your story, because I can't wait to hear all of it. Again, I just want to thank you, as I said in my intro. Thank you for joining this platform, because I know there's something that you have to say that's going to be a great takeaway for people. So again, on behalf of my production team, I want to say thank you again. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Camerlyn Richards, and a little bit about myself. I'm a leadership and personal development coach. I've been in leadership for over 10 years. So I've been in leadership positions, both personally, professionally, just probably before I even, I guess, called myself a leader in a lot of ways. And so I basically graduated with my degree and my master's of public administration. And
Nice.
so, which pretty much allows me to go into any organization and bring order to it. And so, looking at the whole trajectory of my story, before I even was thinking about leadership, I was being led in the direction of leadership. And so I've held positions where I've been at the head. I've also lost those positions, right, for various reasons. I tell my story all the time about being fired from a multi-million-dollar contract where I headed. I was a department liaison, so pretty much I resolved all issues
Right.
I put out the fires and all of that. And so that experience pretty much led me down the road to coming back into a leadership position through coaching, leadership and personal development.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was going to be my question to you. What inspired you to pursue
Yeah.
this path? You know, and when you tell us that, what was most rewarding for you when you did that?
This is the thing. When when I lost that position, I kind of saw that coming, right?
Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't see me coaching and being in personal development now because
Mhm.
to be honest with you, I say it I've just started saying it this way. Personal development is not exciting.
Right.
You
Right.
know, it's not one of those things where I can get online and be like, in 30 days, you're going to be at six figures, you
Mhm.
know, at 60 days or however, you know, no shade to anyone who does that. If you do your work well and that really happens,
Right.
you
Right.
know, more power to you. So I struggled with that for a long time. And then I honestly didn't have a voice for that at the moment because I was going through my own transition.
Okay.
And so when I had lost that job, and it was mainly due to, it had nothing to do with my skill level or me being able to work at things better. But even in hindsight, looking back, I can still say that though it had nothing to do with my skill level, there were things that I could have just handled better,
Wow.
right? Not to keep the job, but more so to accept the lessons that were being presented to me at the time, but I
Right.
didn't do that. So once that transition, it was big, it was major, but the experience really didn't settle with me
Mhm.
until maybe like a year or so later.
Right.
So it didn't happen immediately. So sometimes we think of moments or transformative moments as something that just boom
Right.
happens
Right.
immediately, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's more like a ripple effect and it
Right.
takes a little bit longer to
Mhm.
settle in to really see what's really happening. And
Right.
oftentimes we can't do that because we are we are trying to work out various stories in our own world, in our own narrative, and we miss the story that's being presented to us or the lesson that's being presented to us. And so that's what happened to me. But ultimately, what ended up inspiring me to really get back in it, was the fact that I heard the same story over and over again. I saw the same story over and over again, especially with leadership, period. But with women in leadership, I saw the same story. It didn't matter where, at what point in their leadership they were at, it was the same story. And I
Mhm.
kind of go on this quote, or I have this quote as a foundation. I said, I've never met a leader without skill or potential, but I've met so many that lacked in their personal development. And
Interesting.
so that's what inspires me to bridge that gap.
Right. Okay. Define for me personal development.
Personal development is not just a matter of in a box. It really kind of tackles the whole person.
Right.
Oftentimes, with women in leadership, they can focus on the external, like
Mhm.
their skills, their degree. Not to say that those things don't matter, but personal development takes care of those things, of the things that you need to actually manage your dream, manage your career. Meaning, I may have the skills for this position, but my emotional intelligence isn't there to manage it. Or my self awareness, my social awareness, or just the, just even in how you take care of yourself or the vision that you have for your particular leadership, all of those things. So I look at personal development as it pretty much takes care of the whole person. And I believe that you have to include the whole person in the journeys for more sustainable leadership, especially for women when we are nurturers and we are usually taking care of everything else, everyone else at times, and we forget to factor ourselves in to our own success. you know, and I find that a lot, where women who have reached high heights and we're still dealing with things like self-doubt or imposter syndrome, which could be a symptom of different things or different fears, or just the paralyzing thoughts even in their own leadership style, and helping bridge those gaps so that they can have complete reset instead of compartmentalized reset, really will expand the sustainability of their leadership, and then help them to reconnect to purpose and really be clear about what it is that they want. So personal development ultimately elevates human capital, your employability. It elevates every area of your life.
You know, you said something in the beginning that was so powerful. You talked about your experience and what you went through, about the account, right, that you lost. But what you said was you realized there were some things that you could have done better. And you know what, as you even talking, the word that came to me was ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, right, we don't like to take ownership of things. We oftentimes like to blame, because it's hard when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. Sometimes, right, it's hard to face that some things could be our fault.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
it is. And it could be for various reasons. Like I said before, oftentimes I believe that we are trapped in our own narratives, our own stories.
mhm,
There are so many narratives that are going on sometimes on in the our subconscious that we don't even know about. And
mhm,
we have to take intentional effort to actually understand what narrative is playing out that I'm actually trying to resolve in some way. And sometimes back to what you're saying about ownership,
yeah,
if we don't do that on a regular basis, right, and really see things the way they are and not the way we want them to be, not the way um we've like created the story to be, but just exactly the way it is, I
yes,
think that we can take more ownership. And taking ownership doesn't take anything from you. It actually adds to you. And I think sometimes people think that like if I take ownership for this, then that disqualifies me for something else, or I'm no longer this. And that goes back to what I'm saying about um the narratives that we have going on in our own subconscious that we're trying to resolve. Like
yeah,
maybe, taking ownership to you might mean that you failed, and
mhm,
something for some reason failure means, something really bad for you.
right.
So you have to understand that so that you can move into the place of taking more ownership when you absolutely need to. And if you don't, you absolutely do not grow.
That's so true. You know, oftentimes there's so much pressure, right, within leaders to be authentic. What advice can you give us as leaders to be authentic and not conform?
I think I'm gonna go back to saying, like, we really have to really understand what story is playing in our minds, what story is playing in our subconscious, even about the idea of leadership. I believe that first and foremost, it definitely has a global or universal definition, but then in hindsight, we also have to define it for ourselves, right?
Yes.
I can be in a room full of leaders, and we all can raise our hands and say we are leaders, but each one of us truly has a unique way or unique distinction of leading. If we
Hmm.
do not take the opportunity to find out what that is, then what will happen is whatever image you resonate with or whatever image seems like leadership to you, you will attach yourself to that and start your story, your narrative, and try
Yes.
to be that and
Yes.
trying to be that type of leader.
Yeah.
So authentic leader is first being willing, right, to find out what are you defining leadership as?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is your present definition actually connected or
Right.
in line with what you really want to be perceived at, who you really are? and it may come to questions about who am I really? Because once we start detoxing and uncovering layers,
Yeah.
you may find that a lot of your ideals and stuff comes from somewhere else, and it has really nothing to do with the I would say the purity of who you are. So
Yeah.
I think that authenticity and leadership has to first have a willingness, right? To
Mm.
really define it and do the work. And often, and that definition will grow with you. So
Right.
don't be under a pressure to
Mhm.
like, I got to define it and it's just this and it's just that. No, you know, you may
Yeah.
just have the capacity to say, hey, my leadership or my authenticity and my leadership is keeping my word. Maybe
Mm.
that's it right now. And then it will grow and expands as you grow and expands.
Yeah.
But you have to have that space to continue go there and work it out for yourself because it takes time. I mean, it didn't take us overnight to be what we are.
Right.
So we shouldn't think.
That's such a good point. As you were talking, I was thinking about, because we've been pastoring for 20 years, right? And I remember when my husband first took on the pastorate, our pastor had passed away. And, I was given, if I can use this, a role, what the role of a first lady is. I had people tell me, wait, I kid you not.
I can only imagine.
No, really.
No,
And
I got you.
you had to go to the store. You had to get the suit. Again, no disrespect to anybody that does it. I'm just telling the story. I had to get the suits to match the hat, which matched the pocketbook, and all that. And I remember, and I'm so glad you're talking about this, but I remember sitting there like, this is not me.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it for those. I think it's beautiful, but it just wasn't being authentic, right? I'm a leader and I'm trying to work, I have authenticity. It wasn't me. What was me was the Jean that put on, I like T-length dresses, I like pearls, I like, I'm like, again, that's more me. But then even going further, I found that my true authenticity to myself was embracing the role with the purpose God had given me. You understand what I'm saying? Not just to sit with a pretty hat, but to get that out there and help women and girls break, trauma and help them survive. That for me is true authenticity as a first lady, as a co-pastor, as a pastor. Again, nothing disrespecting, but I'm talking about my story. So when I had the mothers telling me, no, this is how you're supposed to be, I never fit the norm. My husband was teaching, there was this square. It's like having a square trying to put a round peg. I just never fit. When I began to allow God to change me and develop me into a leader, that's when I realized what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, and that's that willingness there. My thing is that so many people have that voice saying this is not me, but they continue to go in that way
Yeah.
for whatever reason. It could be people pleasing. It could be maybe they may think like if I do this, then this will happen. Whatever, again, we going back to the narrative, whatever story that's going on. And this is the thing about these narratives. You don't know when they start. They can come through emotional impact or repetition. You could have gotten that story when you was 3 years old, 5 years old. We don't know where that story is, but you're trying to work it out. You're trying to resolve it. And so it's amazing what you said in regards to once you then listened and then allowed God, you got more vision, right, into how your authentic leadership was going to be. But it's that step, that willingness that you were willing to take, and unfortunately, it's a rare thing. Believe me, it's a rare thing. Because it's again the external expectations people have for you, or you believe that this is what it should be, or this is how I should present myself. So I believe that you definitely have to first be willing, right, to actually pay attention when it just doesn't feel right.
Yes. And that's exactly what it was for me. It just, I couldn't get away from, not, it just, that's it. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it was me. And to your point, when it began to evolve from
Yeah.
the holiness is when I began to see the clear picture of, oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yes, God has given me a word to help women and girls, and it has been so amazing that literally I travel internationally and nationally.
So,
Doors have swung open for that one purpose of developing women and girls. So I didn't stay in
yeah.
that. You know what I'm? So you're
And
so
that's amazing, and that's amazing how that happens. It
yes.
just we don't not often get the full story, and that's why I feel like a lot of gaps are formed.
Mhm.
In leadership, these gaps are formed, or AKA, I also call them voids, are formed, and they are harder to bridge the longer we ignore.
Yes.
And the reason why a lot of women, you can ignore it, it's not like you're sitting at home writing down on a piece of paper, I'm going to ignore, I'm going to ignore. But when
Mhm.
you've gone, circumstance, life happens.
Mhm.
Sometimes you could just be on autopilot, right? You could just be doing and not really resonating. And then
Right.
you look up, 3 years have passed, 5 years passed, you're disconnected from purpose. You don't really understand what your leadership is really all about, but you have the skills and you have the abilities to do it. And see, that's the thing. It's not, leadership isn't just about skills and abilities to
Yeah.
perform the task. It's about the impact that you're going to make. And you make impact by walking in purpose.
Wow. That was so good. We're going to take a commercial break and we're going to come back with Kay Millen. But we want to talk about what's it like to handle vulnerability and does it play a role in authentic leadership? We'll be right back.
In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. As a teacher, I've internalized this message. Every day, all around us, we see the consequences of silence manifest themselves in the form of discrimination, violence, genocide, and war. In the classroom, I challenge my students to explore the silences in their own lives through poetry. We work together to fill those spaces, to recognize them, to name them, to understand that they don't have to be sources of shame. In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel safe sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I was always taught that the most meaningful thing one could do was to give something up, sacrifice something you typically indulge in to prove to God you understand His sanctity. I've given up soda, McDonald's, French fries, French kisses, and everything in between. But one year, I gave up speaking. Figured the most valuable thing I could sacrifice was my own voice, but it was like I hadn't realized that I had given that up a long time ago. I had spent so much of my life telling people the things they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed to.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Gene Price. We are engaging in such a beautiful conversation and being an authentic leader. And if you're a leader in whatever capacity that may be, in church or out of church, you want to tune into this and especially listen to the playback. I have a very qualified candidate or a coach that's on with me today, Camelin Richards, and she's so authentic. And we're talking about authenticity, but she's even authentic in how she's helping us to understand the development of that authentic leader. Help me welcome back Camerlin Richards to Real Talk with Gene Price. Hi, welcome back, Camerlin. Oh my goodness, as I wrote in our private chat, I am so enjoying this conversation, and I can see in the comments that people really enjoying. But before we went to
Yeah.
commercial break, I wanted to dive into a little bit in how we deal with vulnerability and how it plays in dealing with authentic leadership. Can you kind of help us work that out or share with us with that?
Yeah, most definitely. I want to definitely, before I go into the vulnerability part, really talk about authenticity or authentic. And a lot of times people are, and really thinking about that word a little bit more deeply, a lot of people look at authentic, meaning I'm just going to be real. I'm just
Mm,
be myself. And it's a little bit more than that. When we look at the definition of authenticity or the words associated with this word, it has more to do with character than it is of you proclaiming and whatever, that you're real. It's a consistent character that you portray, not just for a moment, but a consistent character, or growing in the depth of that character. But we look at some words, we see that, and the reason why I said that it's about character, because some of the words are trustworthy, pure, reliable, right? Those words are associated with authenticity. And when we talk about authentic leadership, I believe that we shouldn't shame people who have difficulty with authenticity. And I say this because everyone has a story, and there's a reason for everything. And when I say that, I don't mean that someone who is trying to be malicious. I'm just talking about someone who really hasn't really figured it out yet, or really sit comfortably in who they are. It takes time. There are many reasons why people don't. And so if we can't help someone to settle into their authenticness, then the vulnerability, especially for leadership, right, will never happen. Right. And I think many leaders have issues with vulnerability, and I don't mean in an unwise way, because there is a certain level for those that you lead. They look at you in a certain way, but I mean that oftentimes they may be so busy trying to make sure the external is together that they forget to actually embody the leadership, or actually take care of the internal, right? And that's what I mean about personal development gaps. When you sit down and you have conversations, you'd be surprised about who's insecure,
Right.
who has low self-esteem,
Yeah.
and won't admit it, right? Because, hey, I'm a leader. So helping, but see, this is the thing that I also found out about personal development, and I talked about it being a part of the whole man. But in corporate world, personal development is actually marketed to men as leadership. Some of the topics, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, it's marketed to them. It's in their package. So they are being groomed with this personal development idea in mind, right? Whereas where women are concerned, it is self-help. So when you frame it that way, right, the mindset is I can get to it later.
Right.
Not a sense of urgency. So I think that the vulnerability part comes from going right back to where we started. The willingness to own, right?
Yes.
Where you are not as authentic as you should be. The willingness to own, hey, I need a little bit more emotional intelligence here. I'm not really handling this role the way that I feel that I should, or I need to be more self-aware so that I can really impact, right, instead of just rule.
Yes. Yes.
The real power comes from people's willingness, right, to do versus you trying to make people and accomplish. So how do you produce and cultivate a willing heart? Is first the vulnerability part, where actually asking for help, being transparent and being clear, but also it has to be an even exchange, right? It has to be where they are helping you, but you are cultivating them.
Yes.
If it's not an even exchange, it's going to be an issue. It's going to wear out. Your leadership will not sustain. And by cultivation, I don't mean just giving titles. I mean that, but cultivating, like we hear in farming, digging up ground, turning over, pouring the water, knowing what season. giving trust, asking for help instead of demanding help. Just different things, that we can do in our vulnerability, in our leadership to inspire a willingness, right, in those that we lead
Yes.
to do what needs to be done.
Mhm.
But there has to be a true even exchange.
Mhm. Mm. I have to tell you, that was powerful. I'm so glad you went back and said that word again, because I think oftentimes we're parents, right? Well, I'm not sure if you're a parent, but I'm a parent. And I remember as I was coming out of my background of trauma, one of the frustrating things I faced, Kimberlyn, was I had to learn something while I had to teach something. And I had to teach while people are looking up to me, which were my girls, because I have 3 daughters. And that was like a very frustrating moment in my life. So I'm so appreciative of you talking about how the way we handle ourselves, because I had to be very vulnerable, you know what I'm saying? So the way we handle ourselves in that vulnerability is so, so important. And I had to really learn some key points and how to navigate the vulnerability in that
And
moment.
sometimes we don't like it. We don't like it. And we don't like it for our own reasons, but we don't like it because we have this idea of leadership,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Associated a tear with weakness. It's not, you know?
Right. Yes. And you mentioned another word that I use a lot is transparency. I have found transparency has been more of a power-based tool than anything weak, because
Yeah.
people can accept, there's your word, authenticity when you're transparent because you're coming from a truthful place. I have found it to be so powerful in working with people.
Yeah.
I
And,
have.
and then on top of that, even with the transparency, the willingness to even do the work for yourself,
Yes.
you will still find that even in those moments, and if there's an even exchange, even if there's a depth of exchange, meaning the cultivation of them, they will demand you in a good way, right? That you still be that leader because the authority is there. It's not that things will be taken or stripped away from you, but you have to give people a true reason beyond, not beyond, because I don't like manipulation, but most people in leadership use the roles of manipulation. But you got to give people a true, pure reason, right? To go be above and beyond for whatever the agenda is, or to truly be inspired to want
Yeah.
to help you build a vision.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that goes back to that even exchange. One of the things that I hated the most was being capable, skillful, but never cultivated like I
Oh,
wanted.
wow. Yeah. Wow. Capable and skillful, but not wow. That
Yeah,
was
you can have a pile of skills and never cultivate it. It
never
can,
cult.
and when that cultivation doesn't happen, what happens with you is you are able to come in and you can do things, but you plateau.
Yes.
Cultivation gives you the tools to heighten your depth, your width, your length of the leadership you're supposed to be. See, leaders are supposed to give you the tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Deeper, to go higher and to spread wider. Not 1 year and you come back 365 days and you still in the same spot. That
That's
don't
right.
make sense.
That's right. Yes, right. So true. How do you yourself personally maintain your authenticity and be effective?
God.
Yes, 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 yes.
I mean, honestly, the realest authentic person, I mean, to be honest, the scriptures talks about how the word of God is like looking in a mirror and seeing what man of man you are. Now, here is the fork in the road, right, where that man has to make a decision. That man sees who he is, but he has to make a decision to do God's word. It's only when he does God's word does that man become a doer. Does that man become authentic? So seeing who you are is just, hey, But what decision? And that's why I love helping women in leadership make empowered decisions, because we make decisions all day, every day. But what decisions are you making? How are you recommitting to yourself now that you see who you are? Are you going to do the work? Right? So, like I said, when we look at that scripture, yeah, he sees it. He actually sees what kind of man he is. He hears the word, he sees it. But if he turns away, the scripture says, and he does not do it, he forgets.
Do you feel fear plays a major role in people not wanting to be willing to be authentic leaders?
You might, because sometimes there's not a comfortability in, even in self-awareness, communication. Now, when I say communication, I don't mean just talking, because I can say love, and everybody in the room can have a different definition of love.
Right.
Okay. So, but I'm talking about the fears that come with the unknown, not knowing what you may find. And again, back to what I said before, what story are you trying to work out?
Right.
So then if you are afraid to see what's really happening, why?
Mm-hmm.
What did you pick up along the way that told you that if you acknowledge this, if you own it, if you face it, that means the end of your story? Where did this come from?
Right.
And we go back to the beginning. Most times we are trying to resolve a story that we don't even know the name of. We don't even know. We are in the story, but we're just playing a role, and we are bystanders in our lives, not active participants.
Wow. That's so true. That is so true. Wow. What can you do, right? This is so good tonight, to help leaders navigate, like when there's challenges, when there's conflicts. How do we navigate that though, Cameron? Like, to be true and authentic, so we don't make those mistakes. And it's Eddie and Natasha and Talia, as they're listening tonight and they're grabbing a hold to what we're talking about, because it's in every one of us that are on here tonight, we're in some form of leadership.
Yeah.
Some form of leadership. And there is a question on the floor after you ask this. There is a question from Angela, by the way.
I believe that we have to lean more into supported success instead of miserable success. Again, creating the story, the narrative that leadership means this, or whatever image we picked up, whatever image we admire. That's why we have to be very careful about who we admire. Not that they are bad people, but take it for what it is, right? And still come back to the drawing board and say, how can I make this most authentic to me? Is this actually reality for me, right? Even in my personality, persona, all of these kinds of things, right? But I believe in supported success. The moment that a woman in leadership comes to me for help, she's navigating. She's not trying to work it out on her own, from her own, maybe damaged perspectives, right? Or scarred perspectives. She's coming and she's now saying, hey, I want to think about this differently. Or should I be thinking about this way? Or should I be really owning the abilities and capabilities I have and leave this situation? Sometimes it's okay, not to say that you always need to have someone stamp it, but it's okay as a leader, right, to seek feedback and lean into supporting success. So I believe that is a way to begin to navigate, if that's not a part of your regimen already. And then consistently check in with yourself, but don't just check in, how they say, go to the spa and get your nails done. That's nice. or whatever, but check in and really ask the hard questions. First, ask yourself, am I willing to answer the hard questions? And then ask them.
That's so true. When Angela commented, Cameron, she said, bystanders in our lives. How many of us live this way? I don't know if she can expound a little bit what she means by bystanders, but I do want to know what she's saying because it's really true. But even going back to what you're saying, it's so important for us to understand how we show up.
Yeah.
How we show up.
And a lot of us don't, and to be honest with you, the reason why it's important because it's so easy to be on autopilot. Your autopilot is created in two ways: emotional impact and repetition. And not that your autopilot is altogether bad, because you're not going to, our autopilot was created to make things easier. But oftentimes, because we are in survival mode, right, as women doing so much, it becomes a protection. And so we just haze through our lives, not really back to the point of making an empowered decision, but just making decisions as bystanders. And by bystander, meaning in this sense, making a decision not truly connected to your purpose, making decisions without truly knowing what it is, making decisions just to get through the moment, right?
Yeah.
And not making decisions that are really empowering you for the depth of leadership you really want. So we have to first understand the depth of leadership we want, and then create opportunities for us to continuously make decisions in that direction only, and understand that no is absolutely okay.
Yeah, it's true. Angela gave us some more feedback. Thank you, Angela. And she said, when you commented about some of us are bystanders in our own lives, she said something she can identify with as I watched things not pleasing just happen. So then she said that you're hitting the nail on the head. That's good, Angela. I know this is so good. This is so good. I don't even want to wrap up the show, but for the sake of time, we have to wrap up. But Cameron, I would like to invite you to come back because I really feel we only touched the surface. I don't even think we went deep enough because I think I think it's so much more to this authenticity and leadership, because again, leadership is in so many roles: church, not church, homes, jobs, all leaders to some capacity. We would like to invite you to come back because I'm hoping that we have even a bigger audience, because I think we all have something about this topic that we need to talk about.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, we do. So to my audience tonight, thank you so much for always supporting, always tuning into Real Talk with Jean Price, where we talk about real issues, right? We talk about real things that affect us. And then Angela just wrote back and said, it's so much truth, especially for women of color. Thank you, Angela, because it's really true. Because of our culture. It's true. It's just true. So we're going to invite Cameron back. We'll let you know when she'll be coming back on the show. We want you to tune in and have other people come in and listen and take part with this when we bring her back to the show to talk about this. So I want to thank you, Cameron, on behalf of me and my production team.
Thank you.
Part to my viewing audience. I will see you next week at the same time, Wednesdays at 6:30, Real Talk with Jean Price. Have a good day.